Samantha, and I'm going to talk to you about the birth of my second child, Danny. I got pregnant with him in August of 2008. I found out I was pregnant with him on my daughter's first birthday, and this was after my previous C-section. And I was happy. I mean, my pregnancy went well. I didn't really have any of the issues I had with my son except for the group B strep. That was pretty much it. I didn't have any issues. Easy, uneventful, didn't really have any complications. I wanted to have a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after cesarean. I was dead set on it. I read about it. I read like crazy. I read everything you possibly could. I knew that the numbers for successful VBACs were high. I knew that my chances were really good, and the chances of uterine rupture were really low, and I really wanted to do it. So we get close to my due date, and I find out that my doctor might not be in town. And the only other doctor that could do it, or was willing to do it, I hadn't heard very good things about him. So I decided that I was going to go to Anchorage, which is 3 hours north of here. So on May 6th, I was due on May 10th, we drove up to Anchorage, we got a hotel, and we waited. And waited. And we waited some more. And we waited. And finally, on May 19th, after I was due on Mother's Day, May 10th of 2009, I go in for a non-stress test with my doctor up there that my doctor here transferred me to. And he said something about the baby wasn't looking good. So he wanted me to go to the hospital, and they wanted to do a light induction. They told me that you could do a light induction, and it's safe as long as it's monitored, and you don't use as high amounts, and you don't use Cervidil and all that kind of thing. And I knew that you weren't supposed to induce when you're trying to do a VBAC, but the way they talked to me, I really believed them. I believed them that it was okay, and it seemed okay, so I looked into it a little bit, but considering I didn't have much time, I only had like an hour before I was supposed to be at the hospital. I didn't really get to go in depth on it. So I went to the hospital. I had already been contracting without any kind of stuff, but I was only dilated 1 centimeter, almost 2 maybe. So I went to the hospital, and they start the Pitocin, and I don't remember exactly what units they measured in, but I was on 2. I remember I looked at the pump a lot, and it was just on 2 the entire time. So that's probably not much. But they did that, and I remember I wanted to get up a lot, and they wouldn't let me. They kept telling me, you have to lay down, you have to lay down, you have to lay down, we have to put the fetal monitors on you. And so I'm laying there, and I kept getting frustrated because I wanted to stand up. I wanted to get on the birth ball. I wanted to move around. They just wouldn't let me. So anyways, after I kept complaining about not being able to get up, they got one of those electrode things that they kind of screw into the baby's scalp. They put it up there, and they can monitor the baby that way. And again, I didn't really know much about it, and my doctor made it seem like it was okay, and I was dumb and got bullied into doing something, or convinced or coerced, and I shouldn't have. So I mean, I'm sure my doctor meant well, but I really think at that point it was unnecessary now that I look back on it. So they did that, and my water broke because obviously they're putting a screw into the baby's skin, so the water's going to break. And that was by far one of the grossest feelings I've ever had. Just a side note. So my water broke, and the contractions got harder and stronger, and it was going decently. I mean, I was progressing slowly, but I was still progressing. Not like with my daughter where I didn't do anything at all for 12 hours. So I was progressing, and the contractions were getting, so they would go up off the chart. It would skip a couple inches and then come back onto the chart. So they were pretty intense. And then around maybe 11:30 at night, the nurse said something. I don't remember what she said, just because I was so focused on my contractions. I didn't use any drugs until later. I was in labor well, I was being induced / in labor, I'm not really sure what you want to call it, from about noon until midnight. And around 11:30, the nurse said something, and the doctor came in, and I got the same story I got with my daughter. Fetal distress. You need a C-section. So they prepped me, and I started freaking out. I started having a panic attack. My heart was going like boom, 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 boom. It was horrible, and I was like, I was trying so hard to avoid this. I came all the way to Anchorage. I spent thousands of dollars staying up here. so that I could have a genuine shot at having a VBAC, and now I'm having another C-section. What's the deal? So at that point, I was panicking so bad, and I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't think, and I was hyperventilating, and they offered me Stadol, and I took it because I couldn't calm down. I was freaking out. So they offered me that, and I took that, and then they took me back to get ready for the C-section, and they did the epidural, they did the C-section. It was pretty much just like my first C-section, except I was a little bit less scared because I had already been there. And the whole time I just tried to make sure that I focused on something else, and I didn't think about the room I was in. I didn't think about what they were doing. But it's really hard to ignore those kind of feelings and sensations when they're happening to your body. But I tried my best just to ignore it and talk about other things until it was over. So, and this time he came out, he was fine, fat little baby, 8 pounds, 1 ounce, and they took me into a recovery room, which I was really weirded out about because I was in this recovery room, and my husband comes in, and he doesn't have the baby. And I was like, I thought I told you guys that I wanted someone with my baby the entire time. And no one was with him. He was in the nursery, probably with nurses. But, I mean, my husband and I weren't with him. And I remember in the recovery room, I started shaking really bad. Like, I couldn't stop shaking. I was, like, going like this, pretty much. I was shaking bad. And I remember Dan was trying to talk to me and asking me how I was feeling. And I was like, I don't know. What are you doing? What happened? Because I was totally confused. I was totally out of it. And after I had him, we went back to my, they took me to my room, and they gave me a morphine pump. But unfortunately, that little button doesn't let you press enough, so you don't get enough morphine, regardless of how they like to say that it's more than plenty. It hurt, just like the first one did. And I had to recover for a while, and it still hurt just as bad. I actually had the right side of my C-section. It popped open about a week after the C-section and started seeping stuff out of it. I had to go to my midwife here in Soldotna, not in Anchorage, because I had come home after I had the baby. And I had to get them to strip it and close it up and clean it out. So it got kind of infected on that side a little. And that was very uncomfortable and very painful. And I was on pain meds with this C-section longer than I was with my daughter. Fortunately, though, I think that I bonded with my son a lot better than I did with my daughter. It didn't really traumatize me in that aspect. I did really good. I didn't really get any postpartum depression. I had kind of like the baby blues for a week or so, but that was it. And then, other than that, I felt fine. I breastfed. We kicked that off without a hitch. I mean, we did great. But looking back, I have learned that getting around and moving when you're in labor can actually help eliminate fetal distress. Yet I wasn't allowed to get up and move around. I also learned that those fetal monitors do little to nothing. They have not shown any improved rates of saving babies in distress. Those monitors don't help anything. They've not been proven to do anything. They pretty much just tell you, yeah, the baby's heart's beating, yeah, you're contracting, that kind of thing. I mean, yeah, they can indicate there's a problem, but they don't improve success rates, or they don't reduce mortality rates. They don't do anything. And yet I wasn't allowed to get up because of these monitors that have no proven success rates. And I really think had I been allowed to get up, I wouldn't have had to have that C-section. So